What's up, everybody? I hope you're doing well. Welcome to the extended, minimally edited podcast version of this week's video, and hopefully you can hear it in your ears. If you're watching the video version of this podcast, you can see it on screen. I upgraded my microphone and all affiliated, there's just a tabletop of audio-related equipment in front of me. It's kind of overwhelming. Hopefully, though, that means you can hear me much better. I've been meaning to upgrade my gear for a while, and I just had all of these things sitting in my cart and I was trying to just piece them all together. Anyway, it's been months and months and I finally locked it all in and set it up. Hopefully I can figure out how to use it. I've always been so curious about what is the most perfect, ideal therapist schedule out there. Not just how many clients to see per week to maximize therapist satisfaction and happiness, but also how many clients you see per day, how many total days per week do you work, how many clients do you see back to back, do you have to work evenings or weekends, all of that good stuff. So in today's video, I set out to answer this question via an informal survey sent out to my email list, and I received 125 responses, which I was not expecting that many. Thank you so much to all of you who responded. Without you, this video wouldn't be possible. I mean, it would just be me sharing my thoughts, which it's not the same thing. I'll share a little overview of my own schedule over the years, going all the way back to my practicum and intern days as a student, which I'm not going to dig into here because I could make a whole video just about that. But suffice it to say, my work hours were really terrible as a practicum student and as a pre-doctoral intern for sure, and definitely also as a postdoctoral intern as well, working in private practice at that point. Your hours tend to be really, really bad, and for either no pay or very, very little pay. Even as a postdoctoral intern, I was earning somewhere around minimum wage, trying to earn my hours. Minimum wage per client hour, I should say, and not just all my hours. We should come back to that another time because there's a lot to be said. But even once I was licensed, I still kind of hung on to, baggage from being really overworked. At that point, I'd been working for 6 years, starting as a 21-year-old first-year grad student at my first practicum placement, going through a 4-year program and then doing 2 years postdoctoral work before getting licensed. I'd had 6 years of really unhealthy schedule baggage under my belt. And so even though I was licensed and my income jumped at least double as soon as I was licensed in private practice, I still worked some pretty bad hours. I can't remember all the details, but I was working in San Francisco at the time while living in San Jose, which depending on the day, if you include parking, could be anywhere from 1 to 2 hours commute each way. And I worked until 9 p.m., seeing clients until 9 p.m., doing my notes, and then walking to my car, which tended to be far away from the office, and driving back home, which at that point it's 10 p.m. and it's another 45 minutes till I get home. And even once I was licensed, I was doing that schedule at least 2 days a week, seeing clients starting at 8 a.m. and then going until 9 p.m. because it's just what I did. I don't know. And I worked another job that was outside of the field of therapy on the other days, so I just squeezed in a ton of therapy clients on those couple of days. That was back in 2014, and I made some adjustments over time to make my schedule much more likable. But even once I tweaked my schedule to be more the way that I liked it, that schedule has changed so much over the years, just based on my life stage and my needs at the time. I mean, up until I had kids, I was still working evenings quite a bit. I worked, I think, 4 days a week, and I just kind of spread my clients around, even though I'd already come to the conclusion that I needed to kind of keep my caseload under 20 clients a week in order to be in my sweet spot. And I definitely could have seen them in less than 4 days, but I just spread them out. My office was really close to my house, a 3-minute drive. So I just kind of would pop in and out, and that felt like it worked for me at the time. And then I got pregnant, and when I had my first kid, I wanted to minimize how much childcare I put her in. So I put her in 1 day a week of childcare, and I only saw clients on Wednesdays, a bunch of them. And then I worked on Saturdays as well while my husband was with our daughter. And then the pandemic hit when my daughter was like 6 months old and I had no childcare for a long time. So I just squeezed clients in the evenings and weekends, which I will say that was not a happy schedule. I don't think for any of us at that time, but that was my way of kind of trying to make it work without any childcare. Even now my life is totally different. Private practice skills is my primary source of income. I will see clients as long as clients want to keep seeing me and my brain and body allow me to, because I love it so much. So I see clients 1 day a week right now. But I could feel like my schedule might change again. I just put my girls from part-time childcare into full-time childcare literally last week. And who knows, maybe I'll change my therapy schedule a little bit with that too. So that was a long-winded way of saying that from my perspective, even just anecdotally looking at my own life, what kind of schedule makes me feel most satisfied has changed a lot. I didn't even cover that, like, I used to see 5 or 6 clients back to back, maybe not 6, but definitely 5 back to back. Like, I remember seeing clients from like 4 p.m. or even 3 p.m. maybe until 9 p.m. straight back in those San Francisco days, and feeling really good that I could do it that way and just see clients 2 days a week and do other things on the other days. As it stands, as of right now, I pseudo see clients just 1 day a week. I try to keep it around 6 clients a week right now on Wednesdays from 9 a.m. until 5 p.m. And I'll see 2 clients at 9 and 10, have an hour gap, and then I'll see 2 clients at 12 and 1, and then an hour gap, and then 2 clients at 3 and 5, and then I go pick up my kids from childcare. Now, I end up squeezing in some folks sometimes on a Monday or Thursday night, but it feels very accessible since the rest of my week schedule is so flexible. I'm doing stuff like this right now, like literally after I record this, I squeezed in another therapy client, and it's a Monday because I can. So listen, whatever you take away from this podcast, I hope you learned that, whatever an ideal schedule looks like for you has to fit you and your needs, and it doesn't have to look like anybody else's schedule. Well, now that I rambled about my life, it seems like forever, let's carry on and see what other people had to say about their schedules. My approach to this video is a little bit less scripted, largely because I spent forever figuring out how to use this microphone, and I didn't want to spend forever also scripting a video. So I'm just going to go ahead and read through folks' responses to the questions that I had in this survey and, sprinkle my own thoughts and reactions in the midst of them. And folks had a lot of really interesting things to say. And one thing that's important to name about this survey is I tried to make it clear when I put the survey out in my email that it was for all folks, not just specifically folks in private practice, just any folks seeing therapy clients in any capacity. You could be an intern, you could be working at an agency, you could be in private practice. Now, with that said, I'm pretty sure my audience skews quite heavily towards being in private practice just by the nature of my channel and all of that. So I think we probably have a lot of folks who are in private practice responding to this. So the first question I just wanted to know was, of the folks responding, on average, how many therapy clients did folks see per week? Now, I'm not talking about time spent in supervision, time spent writing notes, or billing, or other admin things, just when you're working with therapy clients, how many hours a week are you spending on that? And there was quite a wide range of responses. I was a little bit surprised to see that right about 75% of folks fell in the range between 10 to 24 clients a week, spread pretty evenly across all of those. So 30% of people said they see on average 10 to 14 clients a week, and 20% of people said they see 15 to 19 clients per week, and 25% of people said they see somewhere around 20 to 24 clients per week. So the majority of folks are in that range, again, of folks who responded to this survey. Now, with that said, there's still a good like 20% or so who fell below and above that number per week. So as far as less than 5, it was only one person who responded saying they see less than 5 per week. And then in the 5 to 9 clients per week range, it was about 9% of folks who said they saw that many. And then in the 25 to 29 therapy clients per week, it was 7% of folks. And then I get a little nervous inching up into these numbers, but in the 30 to 34 therapy clients per week, 6% of people were in that category. And then I just had one last category for 35 or more, which I kind of like was clenching my fists as I wrote that in the survey because I was hoping that no one would say they were at 35 or more. But 2 people, which is only less than 2% of people who responded, said they see more than 35 clients per week, which, okay. And again, this isn't number of clients. Like if you had a group therapy where you saw 5 clients, that wouldn't count as 5. It's our therapy hour. That's 35 hours sitting, seeing therapy clients per week. That's a lot. But I'm glad to hear that that's a minority of people. I'll share some thoughts. And one thing that I'll observe is when I was first starting out in grad school, starting out in private practice, first being licensed, I always had this idea in my mind that full-time was at least seeing 30 clients a week, maybe more. And so I always felt like I was incapable or like not successful when I found myself capping at 25 and still feeling like I wish I could see fewer clients per week. So then when I finally just accepted it and capped my work week at 20 clients per week, in my head, I thought of myself as working half-time, even though I was really happy with my schedule seeing, say, around 18 therapy clients per week. I thought that was half-time. And it's taken me a long time to come to realize that somewhere around the 15 to 20 client hour mark per week is full-time. Like, if you count all the other stuff that you do, you probably are adding up to about 40 hours a week. But even if your admin time isn't that much or all of that, the emotional toll that it takes to spend 15 to 20 hours doing therapy work per week, like there's not much margin left after that for most people to keep seeing more therapy clients, even if there's hours in your schedule to do so. So it's not too surprising to see that most folks are seeing less than 25 clients per week, though of course there are still folks who are pushing up above that, but not a majority of people. The next question that I wanted to ask about is how much time folks spend on admin tasks, because I know that this can vary so much depending on if you're in private practice, if you take insurance or not, if you work for an agency or not, that the amount of paperwork, billing, trainings, all that kind of stuff can vary quite a bit depending on what kind of setting that you're in. And I recall, particularly as a grad student working in agency settings, I feel like between individual supervision, group supervision, notes, billing, trainings, like, I don't even remember what other admin stuff I had to do. Like, I was often spending closer to 20 hours a week on some of those things when I was working at an agency setting, and there just wasn't that much time to actually see my therapy clients and focus on that. So I was curious to see what other people had to say. So for this question, how many hours per week do you spend on work tasks other than direct client hours, such as notes, billing, marketing, consultation, trainings, things like that? In the 1 to 2 hours a week range was 11% of people. And then in the 3 to 4 hours a week range was 30% of people. And then the hugest chunk of the pie was in the 5 to 9 hours a week range, which was 28% of people. And then in the 10 to 14 hours a week range was 20% of people. And then once we start going past that, there's not too many people left. So the 15 to 19 hours a week range was 5% of people. And then 20 or more was also 5% of people. I am a little surprised by how much time people are spending on admin tasks. I had thought the vast majority would be in the 1 to 9 hours a week range. But to see that there's a pretty solid, almost 30% of people who are doing 10 or more hours per week, and to see that there's 10% of people doing 15 or more hours per week on admin, just hearing that is sending my blood pressure through the roof. I just, not literally, but it stresses me out. Just, can you imagine? I mean, maybe you can, because you're maybe one of these people. Can you imagine spending 15 hours a week on notes, billing, consults, trainings, marketing? It's a lot. And if you're just starting out and you're not seeing too many clients yet and you're in private practice, that's one thing, but it's just a lot of people. So I was surprised. Personally, I'm seeing 6 to maybe 8 clients a week for therapy. And I'd say I spend about 1 to 2 hours a week on other admin tasks. I'm pretty part-time. So I'd expect that if I was seeing more full-time range of therapy clients, closer to 20 therapy clients a week, that I'd probably expect to spend about 5, maybe 6, 7 hours on admin items. And of course, my practice is private pay, which is a huge variable here. So if you're on insurance panels and you do your own billing, you can expect to spend a lot more hours than that on admin things. Like I remember as a postdoc in one of my group practices that I worked in, they did bill insurance, and I had to do my own insurance billing, and I spent like 3 to 5 hours a week just calling insurance companies to contest denied claims, often being on hold for really prolonged periods of time. I found that to be a nightmare, so I got off that ship as soon as I could, but I know that a lot of folks are having to do their own insurance billing, and that can be a huge time suck. Another question that comes up often for therapists is like, can we reasonably work within typical business hours, like Monday through Friday, 9 to 5 kind of thing? Because naturally, for most types of therapy, somebody's coming in on a pretty regular basis. And so it's not like just, skipping out on work real quick, once every several months for like a doctor's appointment or something like that. It might be every single week, or even every other week is a lot for somebody to like dip out on whatever their job is to go see a therapist and come back. So, let's see what people had to say. And this was a check all that apply type of situation. So of everyone who responded, 95% of folks do see therapy clients at least somewhat during typical business hours. And then 48% of people said they do work evenings. So that's like half of the people who responded will work at least sometimes in the evening. And then 15% of people said that they work weekends. Now, it's important to name that I didn't ask in this particular question, are you working evenings or weekends even though you don't want to? Because it may be for some folks that evenings and weekends are preferable for them. There was a phase where that was true for me. But it's more than I thought it was going to be. I'm trying to think of my own circles, like how many folks I know who work evenings right now, and it's pretty small. So that stands out to me that it's 50%, and then weekend. I mean, 15% that's a lot of folks to see clients on a weekend. Again, maybe you absolutely love working those hours, but as we're going to see in some of the more detailed responses later, not everyone is happy with those hours. Okay, the next question was about whether you are in control of setting your own work hours. And first I had it as a yes/no question, but at the last minute I was editing the survey and I decided to throw in the somewhat option. Are you somewhat in control of your work hours? And I'm glad I did, because it turns out that 13% of people said they are somewhat in control of their work hours, though the vast majority, 84%, said that they are completely in control of setting their own work hours, and then only 2.5% said that they're not in control of their work hours at all. So I think that's pretty telling, and to me, my best guess, again, is that probably most people who responded are likely in a private practice type of setting, because when I was doing agency work as a grad student, I had absolutely no control over my work hours. And even as a postdoc in private practice, in one of the private practice settings I was working, I didn't have any control over my work hours there either, because it was just based on when that office was available and somebody else was putting clients on my schedule for me. So that stands out. Of the people who responded, 85% said they have total control over their work hours. And I'd be curious for the folks who said somewhat, like which parts of their schedule they are in control of and which parts they're not. Part of the reason why I wanted to ask this question in the survey, though I can't know the answer just from the survey results, of course, is I always wonder like how much the perception of having control over our schedule influences not only how satisfied we are with our job, but also our potential for burnout. Because without knowing the reference, of course, I know that research on burnout in general shows that folks who feel like they have less control over their schedules are more prone towards burnout. And so I just kind of was curious to see how that played out with therapists. Of course, anything I'd try to piece together from this survey would be like totally correlational. And so we can't know, but it just stands out that so many people feel like they have control over their schedule. Okay, and the next question that I asked was, how happy are you with your current schedule? And I did a Likert scale ranging from 1 to 5. So 1 was super unhappy with your current schedule and 5 was extremely happy. I tried to name it in the extreme so that folks wouldn't just say, I'm happy or I'm not happy. And hopefully that worked out, but it stands out that of everyone who responded, 125 people, 0 people said 1, so meaning super unhappy. The category that had the most responses was 47% of people who responded with the number 4. So, 1 notch lower than extremely happy. And then next after that was 25% of people saying 3. So right in the middle of the road, like not extremely unhappy and not extremely happy either. And then 17% of people who gave a 5, saying that they feel extremely happy with their schedule. And then 11% of people who gave a 2, meaning they're at least somewhat unhappy with their current schedule. So that's like close to 90% of people at a 3 or above on this 1 to 5 Likert scale, which I think is pretty impressive. That overall, folks are generally okay, at least with their schedule. And that combined, there were 64% of people about who responded with either a 4 or a 5. I'm happy to hear that. Then I decided to ask this optional question. I mean, all of these questions were optional, but I explicitly said it was optional. What changes do you think would make you feel happier about your work schedule? And then I had check boxes that folks could check or they could write in and answer. And of the 125 people who responded to the whole survey, 110 people responded to this particular question. And of the check boxes that I provided, 36% of people said that fewer client hours would make them feel more satisfied. I take that to mean that they're seeing too many therapy clients right now. And so then it raises the question of like, why are you seeing so many therapy clients, which we're going to hear a little bit more about in a second, I think. And then 35% of people said less admin time, like notes, billing, and things like that, which totally makes sense to me given just how many people offered such high responses to my question asking about how much admin time they're spending each week. And then 26% of people said that they'd be helped by having more clients to see. So they're on the other end of the spectrum where they're trying to have more therapy clients. Maybe they're in something like private practice, or maybe they're an intern and they need more therapy clients. And then 10% of people check the box for being in control of my own schedule. I think you can see some of my own biases coming through just in how I structured this survey, that I assumed that a large portion of people responding to this survey would feel like they didn't have control over their schedule. And that was an inaccurate assumption that I made. But there are some people who have that feeling. So I did give folks also the option on this one to write in their response. And I tried to kind of categorize loosely some of these responses based on themes. So again, the question was, what changes do you think would make you feel happier about your work schedule? And the theme that popped up most frequently in people's write-in responses was having more control of their schedule. So again, this is kind of interesting because I have here, I think, 12 responses in this category that folks wrote in, but then the vast majority of people said that they feel like they have control over their schedule. So I wonder that idea of being somewhat in control but somewhat not is kind of coming up here. Some examples of what people named in this section include control over number of intakes I do each week. That makes sense to me. I remember supervisors in the past when I was still an intern seeing an intake as taking up the same amount of time as any other typical follow-up therapy appointment. And that just like confused me so much, especially at some agencies where an intake, once you include all of the admin related to the intake, could be upwards of like 5 hours, sometimes 8 hours, just depending. Even now in private practice, I try to cap at no more than 1 intake per week with my very part-time schedule. I think there was a couple weeks back, I had 2 intakes and that was just too much. So understood. Some other examples, later start to the day. Sounds like people would like to have the option to start later in the day. Someone else says, not being an intern, coming in at 8 a.m., parentheses, I'm not a morning person, and leaving at 5. Also do not have the bandwidth for groups. My social battery is abysmal. Okay, person who wrote this in, I don't think your social battery is abysmal. Groups pull a very different type of energy than individual work, and also how each person responds to different settings is quite different. Like for me, I know that couples work is not where I thrive. I would venture a guess that 1 session working with a couple draws about as much energy from me as maybe like 5 or 6 sessions working with individuals. So it's just good to know that about yourself and adjust your schedule accordingly when you have the control to. Someone else says, being fairly newly qualified, I accepted clients whenever suited them, so my schedule is too spread out. Oh no. I would like to condense the hours into blocks that suit me. Now, this kind of highlights the category of person who, in theory, on paper, has control over their schedule, but they decided to let things kind of slip out of their hands and let kind of their clients dictate their schedule a little bit. And I'm seeing some of that theme pop up in some of these other responses as well. The next one says, I allow folks to self-schedule, and sometimes I'll have one day with only 0 to 2 clients and the next day with 7. I'm on the fence about offering flexibility. So there's kind of this question of like, even when in theory we're in control of our own schedule, like how much control do we actually take? How much flexibility do we offer for our clients to kind of dictate? So, things to think about. Another category that folks responded to with 10 responses in this category is that folks were saying they would really like to work less evenings or weekends or both. For example, someone says, less late appointments. Sometimes I go until 8 p.m. Nah, it's hard to if you don't want that, it doesn't feel good to hear that. In my brain, again, if this is not your ideal schedule, there's something about eating dinner in the office, or worse, delaying your dinner until way too late. Whether you have, folks to go home to that you might share dinner with, or if dinner is a solo experience for you, whether you're working or at home, like something about eating dinner in the office, it just, for me personally, feels like a soul-sucking experience. So again, if you like to work evenings and you like eating dinner in the office, more power to you. But it doesn't sound like this is how this particular person feels. And then there's just a bunch of responses in this similar category. No evenings, to be done by 5 p.m., not working weekends, and then there's just several responses that sound very similar to the ones I already named. A handful of folks responded saying that they would like to have more time for expanded or related interests, so more time for next level projects, someone says. Another person says, I want to grow my business to include podcasts, workshops, retreats, published author. I mean, go for it. Yes. More groups and less clients. And somebody else says, growing my practice, adding clinicians, incorporating more self-care. Wonderful. All of those things sound lovely. And then not too big of a category, but some folks named some pay-related concerns. Someone says higher pay and clients would come during the day. Yeah, if you got paid more, that would be nice. Somebody else mentions being able to get compensation for Medicaid patients that are no-shows. Oh gosh, I could only imagine. I'm not going to dig into that in this video, but I can only imagine kind of the intersection of those two things. Like perhaps there are a lot of no-shows with your clients. You didn't say that, but I could venture a guess that that might happen. So just to think all the lost income. Oh gosh. Okay. Getting paid my full rate so that I can see less clients. Yes. Are you not getting paid your full rate? I wonder what that is. Maybe you have a sliding scale or something. And then I left an optional space for folks to just share any other comments they'd like to name about their schedule, and 54 people responded. Again, always amazes me how many people respond. Thank you for submitting your responses. And there were a few different themes that came up with this one. Again, we see the pay-related concerns come up. So I'll read a couple of examples from that category. One person says, I end up being more generous with my availability for the sake of wanting to earn more. I know that I would much rather have fewer hours, but because of my financial situation, it seems impossible right now. Somebody else says, sometimes I see clients back to back, and that can be overwhelming with rest time and still having to do notes. When I have considered putting time in between sessions, I would be losing out on money. I don't have enough self-pay clients to not feel the financial hit. So both of these kind of sound like folks who might be in a private practice type setting who would like to have more folks paying a rate where they can sustain seeing fewer clients financially, but that's just not there yet for them. There are definitely ways to improve this, but that's a really tough situation to be in, to feel like I'm in control of my own schedule, but not really, because the clients that I'm seeing I'm only getting compensated so much, so I have to see more clients than I'm comfortable seeing. That's a tough position. Another theme that popped up in this open-ended question is this idea that I just labeled boundaries are challenging, and there's different reasons for why boundaries can be challenging. It's not so simple as like, just stick to your boundaries. But here are some of the responses that people named. One person says, I still book too many sessions in a row, even after years of tweaking my schedule. Now, they didn't go on to explain why this happens, but it does happen. I mean, there's the financial reasons that we heard somebody else share about, but also it could just be kind of like that baggage. Like I feel like I'm supposed to, or maybe it's this other person wanted to see me, and so I don't have anywhere else to squeeze them in. So I just put them into this hour that I was supposed to have my lunch or whatever, and we just squeeze them in. It's hard to hold that boundary and turn somebody away or, things like that. Here's somebody else expands on this concept. When I started my private practice, I set my hours in a way that was similar to the hours I worked at an agency because it was what was familiar. Yeah, same. It's a lot of evening work. I've been in private practice for 3 years, and I'm finally starting to shift my schedule to the hours I actually prefer and make sense for my life and family. It's been a process to discern what I really want and what works best for me, and I've had to work through the guilt of reducing evening hours. I've been surprised at how many clients are able to make other times work. Yeah, I went through that too, where, when I dropped evening hours and just realizing I didn't end up losing clients. And I know that's not true for everyone. You might lose some of your clients, or you might shift slowly out of you don't take on new people in the evenings or however you do it. But you can definitely have a practice without working evenings if that's a priority. But what I like about what this person is sharing is they're acknowledging that kind of baggage from agency work that I was talking about of we just stick with what we think we're supposed to do or what we know from before, when if that's what works best for you, by all means, keep it that way. But you also have the freedom to change it if something different is going to fit better for you. Another category that came up in this section I labeled flexibility is great. So I'll read some responses from this category. I don't think I could ever go back to working in an environment where I wasn't in total control of my schedule. Yeah, once you go one way, it's hard to go back. It's true. Someone else says, I pack my schedule Monday through Thursday so I can have 3 days off. I love this schedule. Now, I noticed there was a good handful of folks who mentioned that they work primarily with kids and that they found that this created a struggle for them in the schedule because obviously kids need to go to school, so you have to work around their schedules. Here someone says, I work mostly with kids, so my hours are dependent on the school year. I meet with most of my clients during after school hours, which is great because I can do other things in the morning like working out or other self-care. So it sounds like for this person, that schedule works quite nicely. Someone else says, because I work with some teens, it's hard to have the schedule I want. Ideally, I would work from 10 to 3, but I need to have clients and most of them can't meet until the evening. I'm also just not a great therapist in the evenings. I get tired like a normal human. Yes. No. There's this category that I really appreciate that I'm going to do a deep dive on the podcast version of this video where folks just share how they do their schedules. And I think this is really interesting to look at. And just kicking it off, somebody puts this in the comments, more of a question about how other therapists navigate flexibility in their schedules. I'm moving from group to private practice soon where I'll have even more flexibility in my schedule. I want to balance flexibility, see clients and make money, with my own boundaries. I don't yet have kids and not currently adjuncting, so I arguably could be very flexible, but I think that could get tricky for managing personal life and health things I need to manage. Yes. Even if you have nobody else needing anything from you, you don't have to have a whole bunch of flexibility in your schedule. It's okay. One person says, I offer 50-minute sessions and 90-minute sessions, and that can make scheduling a little tricky too, but it feels worth it. A lot of folks were requesting Fridays, so I made Fridays a 90-minute only day because I don't want to work on Fridays except for long sessions. I've also considered offering 1 to 2 evenings a week at 150% pricing, but I don't like working evenings. So that's an interesting take. Here, this person gave kind of the full overview of their week. I typically do admin and occasionally a few morning telecounseling sessions on Mondays and Fridays, leaving Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday for in-person sessions. That way, I don't have to set up the common areas, entryway, hallway for that professional home office look for 4 days. That makes me wonder if this person actually works from home, even for in-person. I only offer early evening once a week on Wednesdays. I'm not a morning person, so I book my first at 9 or 9:30 a.m., usually book 4 a day with 1 to 1.5 hour for lunch and 15 to 30 minute afternoon sunshine break to get my vitamin D, or sometimes I'll sit outside while eating my lunch or go for a walk to get my mail. I always leave 30 minutes between clients so they don't pass each other coming and going, and also to allow time for snack, washroom, break session, planning, review. Well, that sounds lovely. It sounds luxurious, 30 minutes. I personally get too much brain fog and tired eyes if I see more than 13 clients per week. Tough to make full-time salary, but it's a happy, healthy balance for me. You can make a full-time salary seeing 13 clients a week, depending on how, yeah. there's a way. That sounds just like this person just found the balance of all the things and touches on also this concept that I think comes up somewhere along the way, that it's not just necessarily about like how do you maximize how much income you make, but like how much income is enough for the trade-off of also maybe getting some time or other benefits so that you're not just always filling your schedule with more and more clients. Someone says, I prefer to see 2 to 3 clients and then take a short break and get their notes done before seeing more. Same. I don't see more than 2 in a row anymore. Okay, this person gave quite an overview. Let's see what we got. I think it's important to figure out which days people meet and the windows that they offer. In my small group practice, 5 of us, I control my schedule. I've played with Monday through Thursday, 4 to 8 p.m. sessions, which is 16 hours a week, offering 1 bonus evening spot weekly, like Wednesday, 7 to 8 p.m., and listening to exactly how the schedule is structured for other clinicians is so helpful. My friend coworker told me she only schedules people for weekly or bi-weekly in a set spot, like client A meets every Tuesday at 2 p.m., and I won't set anyone else in that spot until client or I need a change. If clients want to commit to less than bi-weekly time to meet, they get cancellation spot emails and not offered a spot in the schedule in advance, so that a regular client can get the support and consistency they need most. Check-in clients get as-needed sessions, not prioritized scheduling. It's been working great for me and forces clients to consider, am I ready for as-needed or do I still need a bi-weekly support? Also making bi-weekly people line up so there is a minimal open spots. For example, client A gets first and third week at 2 p.m. and client B gets second and fourth week at 2 p.m. This way my 2 p.m. is always booked and no weird gaps in my day unless I want or need that week. Yeah, I do the same thing. Most of my clients are bi-weekly except I think 1. And they're all lined up like that. Okay, I got you on the first and third, and then somebody else at the second and fourth in the same time slot. And if you need to adjust or cancel, there may or may not be a space for you. It's just kind of like, if I have it, I have it. Oh, this person keeps going. After lots of trial and error, I have built a 3-day work week, so I have built in 4-day weekends every week. Nice. Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, I work 11:30 to 6:30 in 2-hour blocks with 30-minute breaks between blocks. So 11 to 1:30, 30-minute break, 2 to 4, 30-minute break. It's about 6 sessions a day when I'm full, which is a lot, but I would rather 3 long days than 4 to 5 shorter days. Works for me. Notes and admin are minimal because of the software I use, so billing, filing insurance claims, and notes seem less. The hardest part is writing a DAP note. I'm super curious the specifics about how therapists set up their work week. Thanks for what you do. Oh, thanks for submitting your extended comment. I appreciate it. That sounds lovely. Yeah, I see 6 clients a day, 1 day a week. But if I saw clients, 4 or more days a week, then 6 would feel like a lot. I could not do that every day, but I know people who do. Here someone else says, I schedule appointments for 60 minutes with 15 minutes in between. With couples, more often than not, it turns into 70 minutes. I don't like to do 50-minute sessions as it just doesn't seem like enough time. Here someone else says, I have a part-time private practice and see clients during lunch and before or after my 9 to 5. I mean, that's dedication. My goodness. Okay, let's hear a few more responses because I think it is super interesting. Here's somebody else responds. It's important to me to be an available mom. I see clients during the week while kids are at school and every other Friday evening and Saturday when they go to their dad's house. Blended family. Sometimes I feel like I'm being ruthless with my schedule, but I know this season of my kids being little won't last long. I want to be present while they're home. I completely understand what you're saying. Like, I've just been expanding my schedule literally this last week for the first time in over 4 years since having kids. And it's kind of wild to me just how much one life change, a significant one of having kids, can just so drastically influence what an ideal schedule looks like, and then it can change again, but you found a way to make it work, so I'm glad to hear that. Here someone asks a question. I would love to know on average how many therapists allow their clients to self-schedule through a client portal. Would also be interested in the pros and cons of this. I can share a little bit of my own personal experience with this if it's helpful. I didn't do online scheduling for the longest time. In fact, I did like paper scheduling on one of those like spiral notebook type schedulers for the longest time, because at that time, the way I'd arranged my schedule is I had like 4 days available to see clients, but I only wanted to see like 20 clients, and I let them all kind of spread out across those 4 days in the like reasonable work hours of the day. And so what I didn't want was a situation where I'd put it all on an online scheduler and I'd have like, a 9 a.m. client on Monday, and then my next client that day is at 1 p.m. And then on Tuesday, I have like 7 clients. I think somebody mentioned this in a previous comment. I wanted to feel like, okay, so first I'll start with Wednesdays. Let me fill my Wednesday, and then we'll move on to Thursday. Let me fill my Thursday. And if I just did it all myself, then I could control where I put things on the schedule. And certainly if somebody wasn't available on one of those days, then I could opt to put them on a different day or something. But when life circumstances changed and I significantly confined my work hours and had a consistently full practice, this just became a non-issue, that I could just open up my online schedule and clients could book their appointments. Now, when you combine that with the fact that most of my clients have an ongoing recurring appointment, meaning they either come in weekly or every other week at the exact same time, and it's just booked out on a recurring basis on my calendar, at any given time, there's only a few one-off open time slots, like somebody canceled, or just, there's like 2 slots that kind of move around a little bit that can be available for folks who aren't coming in on that like regular every other week basis to go and find it online. Now, I've come to love this setup because what happened in actuality with my old paper schedule is, rather than, being able to book an appointment right while I was meeting with a client, a lot of times, they didn't know their schedule or that sort of thing. And so then we'd be emailing to try to coordinate their next appointment rather than just getting it on the schedule whenever we were meeting last. And I would spend a lot of time emailing back and forth with folks. They say, oh, can I come see you at, Wednesday at 12? And it's like, well, I don't have Wednesday at 12. Do you happen to be free Thursday? No, I'm not free Thursday. Can you do this other time? And it's back and forth, back and forth. And now if somebody emails me, I just send them a link. And that's it. So it works for me. I think it just kind of depends on what your needs are. And it's also important to note that depending on what kind of online scheduler you use, you can even tailor it so that if you don't want your appointments to be so spaced out, you can have it only show a limited number of slots, and kind of approach it that way. So there's different ways that you can go about it. All right, I'm going to read one more in this category. I'm still working to build up to my ideal full caseload, which will be between 18 to 20 clients per week. Before I started my practice, I set my ideal schedule and desired number of clients, and with a few minor tweaks based on my wants and needs, I've stuck with this. I am clear in my initial contact information with prospective clients, what my schedule is, and if a prospective client needs a time outside my schedule, I work with them to find a therapist who has more availability. I offer 1 day per week with later appointments until 7 p.m. and 1 early morning per week starting at 7 a.m. Unless there's an emergency, I do not modify my schedule to meet a client's needs because that can be a slippery boundary slope. I have had no issues with clients not finding a time that works for them, and I use Simple Practice Online Scheduler so clients can find times that work for them and book out appointments far into the future to reserve their spots. That feels like a very organized, boundaried approach. And then there's a few responses that I couldn't quite fit into another category, so I'll just read a couple of those. Someone says, I think I'm not typical in that I do intensive sessions and not 45 to 60 minute sessions, so I'm only meeting with a few people per week. My biggest challenge is balancing all my networking and marketing time with client time and having time left over for developing new things. I think it's important to acknowledge that even if we feel like we're not like falling into whatever the typical quote unquote schedule is, that's important and valid. It's not like this weird outlier, but like we're all just building a schedule that fits for us as best as we can, for those of us who have control over our schedules. So I'm glad that you've sort of found what that balance looks like for you. And hopefully, there's a way to find that balance between networking and all of that and the rest of your time with clients. Oh, here's an interesting take from someone in a group practice. I'm an owner of a group practice supervising registered provisional psychologist. I spend so much time in supervision, managing stuff behind the scenes, billing, admin, training, advertising, purchasing, business management, etc. There's a reason why I do not have a group practice. It is an entirely different category of running a business in my mind compared to even being a small business owner as a solo practice. I obviously don't know all that goes into it because I haven't done it, but the little bit of looking into it that I have done, it's a ton of work and time. And so it's incredibly difficult to find that sense of balance between making sure your business is running smoothly so that, your whole livelihood is running smoothly, while also taking care of your clinicians, while also, of course, making sure that you're delivering the best client care possible. It's a whole thing. It's a whole thing. And so it would be really interesting to hear, more details from folks who are group practice owners and how they run their schedules and what an ideal schedule looks like as a group practice owner. Because that is genuinely I can't imagine, how do you fit all that stuff into your week in a reasonable amount of time? And kind of especially as a supervisor too, probably needing to be available, even just things as the employee clinician, you're getting into the building and the building alarm that you're trying to unlock malfunctions, or you forget the code or something like that happens. And then you're calling your boss at, maybe you're working an evening or a weekend, and you're calling your boss to be I messed up the code. There's tons of that kind of stuff too, of just admin things that you may or may not want to deal with at, 8 a.m. on a Saturday. And some of you just left some really nice comments thanking me, which thank you. You didn't have to do that. You're the best. I love seeing the results from this survey, and particularly just how much it paints this picture that I always hold in mind, but it's nice to visualize it, of just how much the ideal schedule varies from person to person. I think if there is a conclusion we can draw about what the ideal therapist schedule looks like, put simply, it's a schedule that allows you to earn the income that you want while having the flexibility to feel like you can set your own schedule, whatever your ideal schedule looks like for you, which can be different from person to person. I was curious about the folks who said that they saw more than 30 clients per week, and saw that one person who was seeing more than 30 clients a week said that they felt like they were in control of their schedule and that they were relatively happy with their schedule. So that might work for someone, whereas for me, I would burn out on week 1 of seeing 30 clients per week. Someone else might realize that their cap needs to be 10 therapy clients per week in order for them to hit their sweet spot and kind of hold boundaries around how they create that schedule. And all of us should be able to be happy with the schedules that we best thrive in, even though they might look so different from each other. So I hope for those of you who have the ability to be in charge of your schedule, you feel empowered to observe, how is your current schedule working for you? Are there any tweaks that you can make to allow it to feel more ideal for you? And for those of you who only have partial control, or maybe very minimal or no control over your schedule, you could potentially find a workplace that best mimics where you thrive best, or you could still see if there are any ways you can advocate with your employer to see how you can have some amount of control over your schedule, if accessible. I know it's not always equally accessible for all places. And it feels important to acknowledge in this video where I'm talking about setting, what your ideal schedule is as a therapist. Those of you who responded who are practicum students, interns, not yet licensed therapists, how many of you offered your responses sharing just how abysmal your schedules are right now and how not in control of your schedule you are? I see you. I don't know how to fix the concerns that you raise, but I wanted to give that concern some airtime in this video to just acknowledge that overall, the way we've set up intern schedules is just absolutely unsustainable. And anyone listening who has power to have influence over that, I encourage you to consider, wielding that power in a helpful way. This concept of paying your dues early on in your career is just so outdated, and I can't believe that it's still just the way things are. It's just the way things are, unfortunately. Whew, well, I had fun putting this video together. Thank you to all of you who responded to this survey. I know it is so helpful for other folks to hear your responses. So thank you again for taking that time. Hopefully it was helpful to you, that you can feel empowered to set a schedule that fits you well, even if it's the slightest little change that would help you. If you can go make it now because you watch this video or listen to this podcast, more power to you. Well, thanks for joining me with my new fancy audio gear. I feel like just seeing myself in the camera monitor with this thing, I feel like so many people that I watch on YouTube that I just so admire Hopefully, ultimately, you can just hear me better so that you can receive what I'm saying. But it's just kind of like a weird moment for me to be using this like fancy audio gear. Hopefully, I know how to use it well enough that you can hear me. And I'd love to hear from you if there are any things that you've learned along the way to help make your schedule more ideal, then leave a comment so that other folks can glean from your wisdom as well. And until next time, from one therapist to another, I wish you well.